What historical event 100% reads like a time traveler went back in time to alter history? I might have found a time traveler in Irish mythology. There's a mythological druid called Mugruth. He is claimed to have lived for over 1,000 years, living during the reign of different kings. Okay, nothing unusual for Irish mythology there. But he flew in a machine called the Ordwil, which sounds like a helicopter. He wore a hornless bull hide and a bird mask, which sounds like a flight helmet / cap and respirator pilots use. He drove a chariot that blinded those who saw it, deafened those who heard it, had sides of glass and was daylight inside, and it killed whoever it struck. Chap was driving a car with high beams, beeping the horn, had lights on the inside and was running people over. Edgar Allan Poe writes about an event 40 plus years in the future. Basically, Poe writes about 4 people who are starving at sea, draw straws, and kill and eat the loser, cabin boy Richard Parker. 40-odd years later, 4 people are adrift at sea in a lifeboat, 1 drinks seawater and goes into a coma. When they draw straws for who will be eaten, the coma guy gets the short straw in a development that surprises no one. And so the 3 other men kill and eat the cabin boy. Richard Parker. Seriously. Cyanide gas attack thwarted in Tokyo subway. 20,000 people could have died, but a worker found a burning gas bag in a toilet just before it mixed with another gas bag, just in time, and put them out. That was in Shinjuku Station. I was in that station that day, and that person might have saved my life. Probably not time travel, but very good timing. The Germans spent a lot of time and money developing a magnetic sea mine that probably would have significantly reduced England's ability to stay in the war, except they dropped a single one of the mines accidentally on an English beach, and also failed to arm it, so none of the booby traps were active, and the British basically found out straight away how it worked and were able to cheaply build magnetic minesweepers. The commando raid on the Norsk Hydro heavy water plant in Hardanger, Norway during World War II. The Norwegian commandos parachuted in during one of the worst blizzards on record, along with hundreds of pounds of explosives, and had to trek through the Norwegian wilderness for 15 days before they found a hunting cabin. The English commandos who were supposed to link up with got shot down, and the only reason they were able to make it to the cabin was that they found one of the commandos' sled, which he had lost as a child. After that they had to hole up in the hunting cabin for months, waiting out the weather. They survived on moss until, on Christmas morning, one of the men managed to shoot a deer. They went on to destroy the heavy water plant as well as sink the ship carrying what heavy water had been produced, effectively ending any chance Nazi Germany had of developing atomic weapons. The story is even crazier and less plausible than I've described, but I'm on mobile so I've left some things out. I always liked the one that a comic had an atom bomb in it pretty closely to bombs used in World War II, and they had it held up until it was used. Or that the writer of a science magazine wrote about it and knew where it was being built. When asked by federal agents how did he know, thinking he was a spy, he told them he knew where the research was being held because all of his magazine subscriptions had changed address to one facility in the desert where the scientists were living. I would say there is significant evidence Fidel Castro. Every single assassination attempt failed, sometimes because of wildly miscellaneous circumstances, including a sabotaged diving suit that somehow got miraculously switched with someone else, who ended up drowning in his place. Dude holds the world record for over 600 attempts, I believe. When the Athenians voted to execute a large group of war prisoners during the Peloponnesian Wars, many of those prisoners women and children, an entire city, a man whom nobody knew or heard of took the stage. His name was Diodotus, literally gift of God. He persuaded the Athenian people to reverse their decision, which they did. Before the messenger reached the soldiers to order them to kill the prisoners, another messenger had reached them in time to inform the commander that the Athenians had changed their mind and let them live. He designed the gearbox backwards to make any real version's wheels lock up and fail. This was a common method used in order to avoid people stealing your ideas. There was no patent system back in the day, so inventors often included intentional errors in their design so that if their work got stolen the product would not function. Secrecy was on a whole different level back then, which is also why there are many things we just don't know the recipe for. Like Greek fire and Damascus steel, woots, for example. Not that we can't reproduce something similar, but the original method of manufacture was a very guarded secret. A similar thing to porcelain and how it took a long time for the West to figure out the recipe. So yes, Leo probably knew how gears worked. Franz Ferdinand's assassination. It was so much happenstance, shenanigans, and tomfoolery that it's like a special achievement in a Hitman game. Bomb that fails to explode. Generals don't want troops lining the streets to protect the Duke cause their uniforms weren't clean. Assassin not sure what's going on decides to go to a sandwich shop on the corner to get some food. Everyone decides how to get the Archduke out of town but neglect to tell the driver where to go, so, when he doesn't turn, all the generals start yelling at him and he pops the clutch, throwing said generals off running boards, and the assassin just walks up and pops them both dead. Thank you for all the love. Wanted to add one more piece of info. My history teacher at university taught a history class covering between the American Civil War and World War I. For the assassination, he had recreated the entire downtown area of Sarajevo on 2 large pieces of plywood. The apple key running next to the Franz Josef Strasse, really detailed. We spent 6 weeks tracing the routes the assassins took to get there, where they stayed, etc. The big drop was at the end when our teacher told us as part of his thesis on this, he went to Sarajevo in 1955 or so to finish his research, and one of his visits was to the World War I Museum in Sarajevo. While there he was speaking to one of the staff and found out that one of the conspirators, as part of his life sentence, was obligated to be the museum director and ensure the museum stays in working order. He was able to spend a couple weeks with him and was a trove of information not seen in history books. For the life of me, I can't remember the assassin's name. Digby and A Company managed to travel 8 miles in 7 hours while also taking prisoner 150 German soldiers, including members of the SS. During the battle, Digby wore his maroon beret instead of a helmet and waved his umbrella while walking about the defenses despite heavy mortar fire. When the Germans started using tanks to cross the bridge, Digby led a bayonet charge against them wearing a bowler hat. He later disabled a German armored car with his umbrella, incapacitating the driver by shoving the umbrella through the car's observational slit and poking the driver in the eye. 1. Digby then noticed the chaplain pinned down by enemy fire while trying to cross the street to get to injured soldiers. Digby got to him and said, "Don't worry about the bullets, I've got an umbrella." He then escorted the chaplain across the street under his umbrella. When he returned to the front line, one of his fellow officers said about his umbrella that thing won't do you any good, to which Digby replied, "Oh my goodness, Pat, but what if it rains?" 7. The Russian writer Fyodor Dostoevsky was sentenced to death by firing squad, and just as they were preparing the groups to be shot, a messenger came with a letter from the Tsar forgiving them, and the sentence was changed to prison labor. He later went on to write some of the most influential novels of all time. There have been at least 40 attempts to kill Hitler after he had risen to power. Sometimes they failed because the assailant couldn't get close enough, at least that's what they said afterwards, but a lot of them failed because of reasons that seem plausible if it happens once but begin to smell fishy when you look at all of them. Elzer's bomb went off as planned, but Hitler, who loved to hold speeches, had finished early that day. Tresco's bomb failed because at first he, as a high-ranking officer of the Wehrmacht, couldn't get his hands on anything that goes boom for months, and when he finally had some, the bomb didn't explode. Talk about German efficacy. Stauffenberg could have just shot the bastard. His attempt was part of a general upheaval after all, so his chances to survive that day would have been not that bad. But he planted a bomb because that went so well the last times. And so on. We will never know why, but somebody believed or even knew that a premature death of Hitler would have been even worse for the world than what we got. Or it was a wereaboo who wanted to see a tiger too. Who knows?